If you're like most of us, you probably struggle with finding people you're compatible with.
True.
Since we've been on that same journey, today we'll be talking about compatibility and how you can find people who are you're compatible with.
Yeah, let's do it. At the end of the episode, though, we do have 3 points of what makes someone compatible. But first, what is compatibility?
I thought we knew what compatibility was in general.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I thought we knew what it was.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
So I was going to talk. I thought what would be more interesting is like the origin of that word.
Okay.
So in medieval Latin, cum means together. Pati, P-A-T-I, means to suffer, which is interesting. So it's to suffer together.
Okay. To be compatible with someone
is to suffer together?
Or be able to suffer together.
Maybe, yeah.
Right? Because I think something else that I found was that in order for you to be compatible with someone, you should be able to overcome challenges in a healthy way together.
Yes.
Right?
Or you should be down to suffer together, you know?
Yeah. Because I do feel like life is all about suffering. And so finding people who you can suffer together with makes you a good partner together.
Yeah.
Whether it's like friendships or relationships.
Yeah. I
That's
agree.
What you want to find.
Agree. Like you're ride or die. I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah,
like that's what that phrase is about too.
Okay.
To suffer together.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you find?
I did not. I found some stuff. But the most, I was like thinking about compatibility, and I was trying to do research on it. But the main thing that I found was that what matters most is trying to be someone who is easily compatible with other people.
Interesting.
Kind of. Like in trying to do research of what makes someone compatible, I found the first step that other people should take or anyone should take is how can you become a stronger magnet for people that you want to attract?
I see.
Right? It's one thing to find people who are compatible with you, but if you don't know yourself, it doesn't make sense for you to start looking because you don't know what you're going to be looking for.
Yeah.
Right? The thing that I did research on was what makes you a strong, quote unquote, magnet. And I think that's understanding your values and what you're interested in. So that way, when you're looking for people and you're looking for friends, you know exactly what to spot and identify. Right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say, for instance, I'm trying to find friends, but I don't know what the boundaries that I have for myself are. And so when I'm looking for these friends, they end up becoming really shitty friends because I don't know what I value.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of what I was reading up on compatibility is having the same values.
Yeah.
And if you said if you don't know what your values are, then kind of doesn't make sense.
Right.
How are you supposed to find someone who has the same values as me if you don't even know what your own values are?
Exactly. And I think for me, that was a challenge that I had growing up of what do I value and what do I care about? I felt for the longest time I was just kind of coasting by.
Yeah.
And so, but now I'm I value self-expression, I value creativity, I value family. And so when I'm looking for people, I can spot the small things that they do to be oh, that person is the same wavelength because I would do something like that.
Yeah.
But if you don't know, then how are you going to find people like that? You know?
Exactly.
And I think it comes into a very dangerous territory because if you don't know what fills you up, someone will take advantage of that. And they can spot that insecurity about yourself of oh, you don't know exactly what you like. And so I'm going to try to mold you into what I want you to be.
Yeah. I think in the same ideas having the same values or knowing yourself. One thing I read on was also being aware of what type of friendship you want.
Okay.
You know how we have ideas of what type of relationship we want. If we want
tropes?
No, not a trope. Do you want a serious long-term relationship or a short-term relationship?
Yeah.
There are certain times where you also have certain friendships you'd want, and certain people are more compatible for those types of friendships. Having a friendship. Some friendships I feel don't have to be super deep, you know? And certain friends aren't compatible for those really deep connections.
Yes.
While
Yes.
there are others that are like, this is a friendship that is made for a
Mm-hmm.
long-lasting, long time. Like, we
Yes.
grow together.
And I think it also has to do with people's ability to get into a certain level quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know that I might have some friends like last year who were just gym friends.
Yeah.
Not because they weren't people that I like didn't want to spend time with alone, like, or outside of the gym,
Yeah.
but it was more like it made more sense to me because the pace at which they were comfortable sharing more about themselves was really slow.
Yeah.
And so that was like their kind of role in my life was like they're just gym friends. Like they're great people, but just like I know other people would want to see me in different spaces than just the gym, whereas these people just really are just gym bros.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. And I think it's sometimes like hard to force that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can try to force like compatibility or like a connection between two
Yeah.
people. Like, hey, we should totally hang out. But like, then you hang out and you
Yeah.
realize like, oh, I don't know anything about this person, and they don't seem
Yes.
comfortable sharing
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
fast.
yeah.
So it is something you just like can't
Mm-hmm.
like force at all.
And I think what's interesting is that a lot of people see compatibility as starting from an activity. And like I think that's like the easiest thing to start with.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, we both rock climb.
Mm-hmm.
Or we both work at this hospital, you know? But when you try to take it out of that context, it becomes much harder because now you're not tethered to this one thing.
Yes.
It becomes like, well, what's the rest of you?
Yeah.
You know, who are you outside of work? Who are you outside of rock climbing?
Mhm.
And do our values align? And I think that's the challenging aspect. And that's where a lot of my friendships start is like the shared activity, but then slowly fail. And that's okay,
Mhm.
right? But it's like I slowly realize, oh, you know, this person isn't the same vibe as I
Yeah.
am in other areas of my life, right?
Yeah.
Like we might be the same person and we might be really fun when it comes to rock climbing, but when we step out of that, I can see the little nuances in their actions to signal to me, oh, that's not something you value. Like you don't value kindness the same way or thoughtfulness, or you don't reciprocate in the way that my other friends that I value more reciprocate it back. So I think that's also like something that people might struggle with is that like that's an okay thing.
Yeah.
Like this is a shared experience that everyone goes through where, hey, by the way, like you might vibe with somebody in your class, but as soon as you step out of econ, you're just like, oh. We're literally not compatible
Yeah.
in any way.
Yeah, and I think like often people will confuse similarity with compatibility.
Yes, that's wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong. But like the idea of like, oh, well, we have like the same, I don't know, I guess we go to the same church, like maybe we have the same major,
Right.
you know, like we work at the same place, like, oh, we must be compatible because we're talking about like this shared topic.
Right.
And like, yeah, once you take it out of that context, then you realize you aren't compatible because you probably have been mistaking our shared like similarities
for shared values.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's also interesting because it's not you're not taking it out of the context. I think it's more like you're adding more context.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like let's say for instance, if we met at church and we're like, "Oh my gosh, like we're so glad that we met at church and we're always talking about church and going to Bible study and like praise and worship or whatever." And then we step out of it and we're having like burgers, you know, outside of church and we start talking about God. And I come to realize, oh, you actually believe in God. You know? Whereas for me, I'm just going because my family's making me go. But for you, like you actually believe in this.
Yeah.
And like respectfully, that's cool. But now we're adding more context and we're getting to know each other more and we realize, oh, we're not the same in that way. But the other way can come, you know, the same thing can be reversed in the sense of like we're eating burgers and we're talking about retreats and we slowly look at each other and we're just like, oh, actually, I don't actually believe in this. And then you look at me and I'm like, oh, I actually don't believe in this. Yeah. And hey, bestie. Yeah. And then now we're clicking more.
Yeah.
But I think that transition from similarities and like that context where you guys first met, taking it outside is like the first trial, like the first step of understanding and like seeing whether or not you're more compatible with the other person.
Yeah, and I think like once you've taken it to that next step, or the first step, I guess you're saying, I feel like you can pick up on things.
Yeah.
Like little by little, like how well you communicate with them and like like how they respond to whatever you're saying outside of like that shared interest or like common thing, you know, outside of talk, like going beyond like your, I guess, whatever you have in common, and then talking about your emotions, you know, how will they respond to those? Like if you start talking about your day and then you hit them with the honest, I'm doing terribly. Well, how will they respond to that?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Like if they go like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Like how can I like help you out? Like, and that's how you want to be responded, then you know it's like a, oh yeah, like that's a good friend.
Yeah.
But there are other people who are just like they don't want that level of attention, and that scares them. So it really depends on you, because I can see myself being the type of person who's like, hey, like I want to give you space, like what's up, what's wrong? But the person who's receiving that is like, whoa, dude, that's way too strong. I was just like, all I wanted was you to just be like, dude, that sucks, but like you're giving too much, too fast, stop.
Yeah, I think that has actually happened to you. Where like
to me.
Yeah. Where like I remember you were telling me about how like you were just being yourself.
Yeah.
And you're like, is this too much? I'm like, no, I don't think so. Yeah. But the person did think it was too much. About. Yep. So it was just like, but I don't know. You really can't help it. And obviously, like, everyone's different.
Everyone is different. And I think it's like, it's really interesting because before, like, we're talking about compatibility here. We're not talking about what's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And I think when that happened to me, when I was giving myself to this person in a way that I would do with anyone, my friends, they took it as like whoa, you don't have boundaries for yourself and you're too much, and like it's too much for me. Mm-hmm. And I think originally I looked at that and being like, questioned my life. I was like, am I a terrible person? Am I like fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had a lot of my friends reassure me. They were like, hey, Ian, like that's okay. I really like that about you, actually. Yeah. This person just isn't used to that. And that's okay. That just means you're incompatible with each other.
Yes.
Not that you're a bad person. And so like, as we're talking about these things, we're not saying like, this is how you should be reacting. It's more like, these are the things that you should be picking up on to see whether or not the person is actually compatible with you.
Yeah.
Right. And the first one that we wanted to talk about is the responsiveness to the mood.
Yeah.
Right?
So basically what this means is, how do they respond when you are talking about your emotions and your feelings?
Yes.
So, or maybe not even talking about them. How, like, when you are just feeling something, how do they respond to that? Because there are people who, like you said earlier in your example, that like, oh, I'm sad. And then if you...
Hey, dude, are you okay?
That's too much, you know? Obviously, we might be incompatible in that way. But responsiveness to mood is just basically responding to a person's mood and vice versa in a way that like works for them.
Yes.
You know, if they want to talk about their emotions and how they're feeling and like go dive deep into that, are you willing to give them that space? Yeah. And are you comfortable hearing someone talk about all their feelings?
Yeah.
Or if you're not, like, is the other person okay with not sharing all their feelings either, you know? And they know that that's too heavy for you to listen to. Mm-hmm. So they'll respect that and like talk to someone else about it.
Yeah, and another thing too is that it doesn't have to be all sad too.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like another example of this is that like, let's say if I'm like, we reached 30 subscribers, you know? And I tell my friends about it and they're like, dude, that's freaking amazing. Like, I love that for you. You know, I'd be like, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. But then if I tell someone else 30 and then they're like, oh, shoot, are you okay? It's like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, you know? So it could be on positive news too, and how you want that to be reciprocated. Because other people, like, they want to be celebrated in that way. Other people might still be like, whoa, wait, hey, that's too much.
Yeah, relax. And I think like this first thing on this checklist is like, also how good are they at reading your mood? Because like, say someone does say like, hey, I just got 30 subscribers. Like, that could be like, is the other person able to pick up on that and be like, oh shoot, they're excited, okay, let me like be excited for them, you know? Some people, I think like, if you can't read them well, you might take that as like, oh, okay, like that's casual, like we're not trying to make it a big deal, so then they will make it a big deal. Right. But yeah, being able to also like read off someone's maybe like body language and face, and I think that might be coming through, like you might get that through like time from knowing them, or just being able to like understand them well and like, oh, the nuance and the differences in their like how their eyebrows have just moved.
And I feel like that's why it's so important to spend time with somebody
in person
because you get to experience like how stimulus might affect them, right? Like let's say if you're a friend who, just isn't comfortable with crowds.
Yeah.
Right? And you can notice in their face, but you wouldn't know that unless you're in a crowd with them.
Yes.
It's different from them saying that they're like introverted, but when you see that they're getting like teary-eyed and super overwhelmed and anxious, you start realizing the gravity of how much introverted they are. And then I think also, before we get to the next point, I want to talk about how like emotional intelligence is one of the ways to be really compatible with other people, right? Like being able to understand those nuances of just anybody or the people that you meet is super important. And I think what's interesting is it reminds me of this one article that I read of how like small talk is actually super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I sent it to you. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Okay. But basically, like, I used to be the type of person who hated small talk. Like, I thought it was such a waste of time. I was like, I'm just trying to get to know you. Let's go quickly. I want to, like, understand at first, if we're going to be compatible with each other. If you have similar values. So I want to get stories out of you. I want to hear from you. But this article kind of changed my perspective on small talk. Because with small talk, you're actually practicing your ability to read someone. In those few words of exchange, you can read whether or not they want to engage with you. And that's the purpose of it. So if I'm like, because this is something that I do often, is that like when I'm at a grocery store, I'm always talking to people. Like the last time I remember that was I was holiday shopping and some guy had like allergy medication and like some snack. So naturally, I would be like, hey, allergy season, am I right? And the guy like responded and he was like, I could tell from his body language. He was like, yeah, like my kid's like just allergic. He's like going to the East Coast. And then we started talking about Chicago and New York and like my trip going there and everything. And so like the small talk was important in order for us to get into that deeper level. Because if he had responded with like, yeah, allergies, crazy, I'd be like, okay, not gonna talk to this guy.
Yeah, and I think that was like a step that was necessary for instead of like, so which one of your children is allergic? That's a huge assumption. Right. But now oh, okay, like I don't know. Like now who has allergies and all of that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And then you got to a deeper level.
And so being able to like, aside from knowing yourself of what you value and what you care about, another important step of this is being able to have high emotional intelligence. And I think the only way to do that is either to read books, but most importantly is just to be around other people.
Yeah, and practicing talking to people, and even if it means talking about the weather.
Yeah.
Because the weather is quite an exciting topic, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot can come from the weather.
Yeah, and you could be like, like the weather, am I right? And then they go like, yeah, the weather, like, I mean, it's different than how it is in Montana. And I'm like, Montana? Yeah. And then you go into this whole ramble about Montana and how they like moved here for work. And like, that's how it starts. So practice emotional intelligence if you're trying to be compatible with other people, but also just to be like a good person. I feel like that's important.
Yeah. Segue into our second thing is comfortable communication. This is another way to spot if you're compatible with someone.
Yeah.
We just talked about communicating in small talk, but comfortable communication specifically goes into, are you comfortable talking to this person, say this like new friend in your life, about certain topics, and are you comfortable in the sense that like they're willing to listen and you aren't afraid of their response?
Yeah.
So when I wrote this down initially, it was I was thinking about the people I am compatible with, like my closest friends. And one of the things that stood out to me is that I'm always comfortable sharing like what's going on in my life or like how I feel about something they did. I was also thinking about how like there are all the friends that I'm really close with.
Yeah.
I have gotten into arguments with them, or like maybe we've done something upsetting to each other.
Yeah.
But we are so comfortable in communicating with each other that like if I'm like, hey, I don't like that you did that to me, they'll be like,
sorry.
Yeah. They'll be like, sorry, and then they won't do it again. But they'll also like acknowledge it, and they won't just like pass through it, or they won't react to it with like hostility.
Yeah.
They won't be like, oh my God, I can't believe like you would even, I'm not, that's not my thing. Like, I'm not trying to do that, and then that makes you uncomfortable. So like,
I think it's like, it's hard right? Because I know what you're trying to say is that
Yeah.
like communication is super important and how they react. But what I'm hearing from a lot of this is that like to be compatible with someone, you have to put yourself out there, you know, and that's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary for like, especially if it's like a new friend and to say like, hey, that made me uncomfortable. You know, I didn't like how you did that.
Yeah.
Like that is scary.
That is scary.
You know, but definitely necessary to understand whether or not the communication is well.
Yeah.
You know, because like what I'm hearing from you is that like a lot of this is like a lot of bids for connection.
Yeah.
When you're throwing something out there and you're hoping that they catch it well, you know, because you won't know if you're communicating well with someone until you say something and then you get a response.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It is important to just be honest with them because it also will build resentment in you.
Yeah.
If you're early on in the relationship, even if it's like a small thing, like you know, I'm not trying to like, hey guys, point out anything
that bothers you.
That bothers
everything.
you. So you can figure out if you guys have good communication with each other. Anyways, not what I'm talking about necessarily is like, oh, if I have a complaint, I will give it to you right back, you know?
Yeah.
It's just more like
setting boundaries.
Yeah, setting boundaries and like how will they respond to you setting boundaries? Because setting boundaries is completely fine, you know?
It's like super normal. And I think some people don't acknowledge that until like later on.
Yeah.
But I think the sooner that you're able to acknowledge that setting boundaries is actually really helpful for a relationship, because you're not saying that, hey, I don't like you. You're saying like, I like you enough that I'm trying to figure out a way that we can work.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think also, like, you don't want to cut everyone off who just doesn't have boundaries.
Yeah.
But I think, like, setting those boundaries also teaches the other person who might not know about boundaries how to set them in a healthy way, you know? Because I think a lot of people assume, like, setting boundaries is like, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
But a person who can set boundaries properly and, like, can communicate what they want and what they need properly will be like, here's my boundary, but maybe we could do this instead, you know, and like giving you another option.
Yeah.
So someone who's willing to make those boundaries and like communicate with you, I think shows
like a healthy compatibility. Yeah.
Is a good step in compatibility. The third is having innate interest for the other's growth.
You know, this was an interesting one when I first saw it on our outline, because I think this might just be specific to us, maybe. Because I'm not sure if other people are like, oh, do they care about growth as much as we do? You know what I'm saying?
I think growth can mean different things for different people.
Okay.
Like it could also just be like growth could just be like how well you're progressing in a game that you've been recently doing, you know? It doesn't necessarily have to be like life goals or anything like that, but someone who's interested in the things you are interested in that improve your life or make it better.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think like the word growth kind of can sound like too inspirational or like
or productivity vibes or just like career energy.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. They should be excited about you progressing in ways that you want to progress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because like one of the ways that I show interest in your growth is like how every time you buy a new piece of clothing, you show me.
Yeah.
But piece of clothing doesn't necessarily mean productivity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just like, but in your eyes, getting a new outfit that you feel confident in is you growing. In your self-confidence and like in your life.
Yeah.
So I think like having that interest and having people who also show that same interest in you is a way you can identify if someone's compatible with you.
Yeah.
So because it's easy to like, oh, you got a new outfit, okay. You know? But people, I know that.
I've felt that before where I might share something with a friend and the reaction is disappointing.
Or like underwhelming.
Underwhelming
for how excited you are about.
And it's like, man, I wish you were just more excited about me because clearly I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
But I think what's nice about this, and I think something that I wanted to talk about too in the second point that you had about communication, is that a lot of this is you have to keep trying. You know what I mean? And I think it all wraps together in a way because it's like, in order for you to know that you have good communication with someone, you have to put yourself out there and actually try communicating.
Yeah.
If you want to see someone show interest in your growth, you have to share those moments of growth with them. And that requires a lot of trial and error because now I'm 25. And so like I've had a long time not that old, but like,
a long time.
A long time to
Emphasis on a long.
But like a long time to like make friends and lose friends and like build new community and lose old community. But like nothing about that like anymore feels personal. You know? I think before I would be like, oh, are you serious? Like they don't care about my growth? Like I hate them, you know, and they hate me. And it's like a personal thing. But now I'm just like, no, that's just how they are. And like that just means that I won't be in their life and they won't be in mine. And that is okay.
Yeah.
You know, but it takes a lot of trial and error. So I feel like for the people who might be younger than me or the people who haven't even figured out how to build community and find people who they're compatible with, like it's a journey. It'll take so long, you know, because like at some point, you'll find people who you're compatible with and then now you're just like, oh shoot, like this is what I was looking for. You know,
going back to like having innate interest for another person's growth, another example is like I'm personally very excited about getting a new notebook. But like
so niche.
And my friends who are not into stationery at all will also be like, oh, I'm happy for you, because they know how happy that makes me. There are friends who aren't interested, and, you know, now I've like not because of this one thing, but I have like gradually cut them off from my life because it just like they don't reciprocate the same energy that I'm hoping to get. But also like I've caught myself like not being excited for like things that my friends, my former friends have shown me, you know? And that's not, again, it's not anything personal. It's just that I don't identify as like, oh, I was supposed to be excited about that. That's just personally my bad. But it wasn't anything like, God, I hate you. Why would I be excited for anything you care about?
Right,
you
right.
know?
I think like when you're looking for compatibility in relationships and in friendships, something important is that like how your energy is compatible with one another. You know, like if you are spending time with people who have no interest in what you are interested in, but you tend to get energy from what they say or how they talk, then that also is like super helpful. Okay, nose break.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. Sorry for the nose break. Okay.
Anyway, so we were talking about energy compatibility, and I think when I look for people, I try not to think so heavily on the things I can write down on a piece of paper. You know, because when you write stuff down on a piece of paper and you're just like, well, or like mentally, you're like, we're both Filipino, we're both into arts, we're both nice people. Like, yes, that works, but also what you want to be looking out for is how do they make you feel?
Yeah.
You know, like genuinely when you meet someone new, it should feel like, oh, I feel so like good about yourself. You know, maybe you can't even describe it, but it just works. And I think that like, even if you can't define why it's working and you feel compatible and you feel safe, like you should lean towards that.
Yeah. Obviously, you should, I think, go with how you feel. But these are 3 things to start you off.
Yeah.
And like just 3 guidelines to help you find those compatible people and like start building your community.
Yeah.
But, you know, follow your heart, guys.
Dude, hey, heart to mind.
Heart to mind. One last thing I want to mention before this video ends is that I did think it would be fun to like put our birthdays in a generator and like a thing to see what our percentage of compatibility is based on our signs.
Is that a thing? Okay, for sure. Let's hear it.
And we got 41%.
That's crazy.
I know, that is crazy, and they gave no explanation on it either. Yeah. So it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought it was a little fun.
You know what? I think that proves our point. Like, it doesn't matter too much. Because I feel like we're pretty compatible in the sense of like we're best friends.
Yeah.
So having a 41% compatibility rating for this random website that you found based off of our star signs just shows that astrology's fake. I'm playing. But like you get the vibe. Like it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
You know, like
I think follow your heart.
Follow your heart. It is all about like, yes, we can use responsiveness to mood, comfortable communication, and innate interest to your growth. But at the end of the day, it really is about trial and error, knowing yourself well enough, and then trying. Yes, trying to find people and like realizing that it's not a big deal. Like realizing that it's not personal if you're not compatible with anybody.
Yeah.
You should just keep on trying, and then eventually you'll meet somebody at a party or like at a cafe and you're just like, whoa, I want to keep talking to you as a friend. Like you're so cool. And then boom, friendship.
Yeah. Friendship. Boom. Community. Boom. Best year ever. Boom.
It's a good life. Well, that's it for our episode. Thanks for tuning in. This is Ian
and Joey.
Oh, fantastic. I think hopefully in the next episode, we actually become episode number 1. And yeah, hopefully this was interesting. If you haven't already, subscribe.
If you made it this far, comment the emoji with a chick in a. Isn't there a chick in the,
and like a little egg?
Yeah.
Yes,
there.
and if you do that, then that will be happy because we have terrible retention in our videos.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. Anyway, we'll see you next Thursday, 8:30. You know the drill. Bye-bye.